What do we need to think about in order to develop marketing strategies that are fit for 2022 and beyond? Here to outline how his firm is evolving its marketing playbook, please welcome Foot Locker's Global Chief Marketing Officer, Jed Berger. Jed, wonderful to have you here with us today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, real pleasure. Really looking forward to digging into what you folks have been doing over the last couple of years and more importantly, how you see that journey evolving as we move forward, where you see the kind of the key developments. Folks, I'm going to be talking with Jed through some of that journey, but we do welcome questions for you. We'll be taking questions from the audience towards the end of the session, so do get those over to our producers and we will get them over to Jed. But Jed, let's maybe kick things off if we can. Perhaps to build upon some of the ideas that we just talked about there with Joshua, with regards to some of the change that we have seen over the past couple of years. What for you has been the most significant trend or development that we've seen emerge over the last, or solidify over the last couple of years?
Well, I mean, I think that for me, honestly, it's not one thing, but it's probably more having the company self-awareness to understand that transformation and the idea of evolving your business and your brand ongoingly is probably crucial, and that you really, we know that the customer isn't staying static, and that they're being influenced in ways that are changing them. And you have to have the self-awareness to understand that your company can't stay static either, and just have the foresight to understand that you can't do everything. So some things are going to have to go as you continue to change and update who you are and what you spend your time and resources on.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jed. Well, I know this theme of evolution is going to be a big part of what we're going to be talking about today. So maybe we can start there if that's okay. We talked a little bit about relevance with Josh there. You mentioned it as well. This idea of keeping up with the customer's not staying static. So how have you been able to maintain relevance, with your consumers, given all the changes that they've been going through, and given all the changes that you've been going through as a brand over that period?
Yeah, and I think first of all, it does start with that self-awareness, and I think this company has it. We've been Foot Locker Inc. is a portfolio company, and we've had a lot of success for a very long time. Actually, I mean, we're almost a 50-year-old company, and over that time, we've continually evolved and transformed the business, and we continue to do so. What the portfolio consists of today is not what it consisted of 6 months ago, 8 months ago, a year ago, 3 years ago, 50 years ago. Some of that has been through acquisition. Some of that has been sunsetting or letting go of some properties and some businesses. Some of that has been launching some new pieces on our own. Some of that has been expanding globally. Some of that has been through investing partners. And so today, we have 8 consumer-facing omni retailers from around the world. We have 7 owned or controlled apparel brands. We have a licensed division within our organization. We own a U.S. apparel manufacturing company called Team Edition. We launched an incubator a few years ago called Greenhouse. We threw out our loyalty program at one point because it wasn't serving the current needs of the business or answering to the customer needs, and we launched what we would sort of refer to as almost the Bonvoy of sneakers, called FLX. And we've also invested into 5 or so partners, including GOAT, which is one of the biggest secondary market sellers in the world. And so, we have both first party and third party, 2 things that people thought couldn't be done in a lot of different industries. And now you've seen it done in both tickets and in sneakers. So we continue to add and subtract and pay attention to both the business and the customers. I also feel very fortunate to work in an industry with people and customers that are really passionate, and a culture that surrounds sports, music, fashion, and purpose. And that really does force you and allow you to keep both product and content very fresh and relevant.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super exciting journey that you've been on, Jed. And I'm kind of interested to know how you prioritize, how you kind of pick what to work on next, how you keep pace with that fast-moving customer landscape in order to evolve what you're doing and not just chase the newest and the latest thing, but actually make slightly more informed and strategic choices about what you want to work on?
Yeah, I mean, there's no simple trick to that, right? I mean, I think that's what I think that everybody's trying to figure that out. And, when a lot of companies work in a very matrixy structures and everybody has sort of different focuses, but what you really need to do is get aligned and all be going the same direction. I think it's probably a crucial question that you're asking. I think, first of all, making sure that you're aligning as a leadership team on the top priorities within the organization, and we all have a beacon that we're going towards. And we, I think we have to make sure that we are all heading in the same direction, and that there are short-term goals to get there, medium-term goals to get there, and then long-term goals to get there. Now, we're a public company, so short-term goals do matter, so putting the resources to moving the needle on monthly, quarterly, annual comps and is really important because you have shareholders. But at the same time, you have to make sure that those objectives are balanced out with where you need to get to long term. So whether that's making sure that you're not being too reliant on one or two partners and that you're investing into bringing other groups along, which takes some discipline and patience, or whether you are changing the way you measure, so you're not just incentivizing everybody on short-term success. These are things that you really have to make sure the company is aligned on, both on the short-term and long-term, so you don't find yourself with some long-term pain for short-term gain.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks for sharing, Jed. You mentioned this idea of customer relevance, and of course, a big part of that is data and utilising data. So, how are you utilising consumer data in a way that's most impactful? How are you using it to inform those decisions, inform that prioritisation process?
Yeah, so a number of different ways. I mean, first of all, making data accessible to our business is actually my number one priority right now. So in North America, 65% of our transactions are identified. That's a lot of data. Traditionally, we've been really good about talking about what has sold and where it's sold. But the unlock for us, which sounds very simple, is making sure that we're changing the narrative internally to focus on the who. We've traditionally done a great job collecting that data, but this is much more about curating it and acting on it. And so I was very careful with my words and making sure that when I said at the beginning that my priority is getting the data available, because making it accessible to the consumer, because traditionally it's been pretty available, but not so accessible. So I have a couple suggestions here that I would say. I mentioned the idea of having a beacon to keep everyone moving in the same direction, and that's true. You need an overarching data score. You need to score your customers and make sure that you are segmenting them in some sort of value proposition, financial value proposition, so everybody is moving them forward. But then at the same time, data access and KPIs and reporting have to be different for different functions. There's no one size fits all for reporting. So making sure that we are building out the reports and getting the information to the right function is crucial. And then having an overarching macro score that the entire organization is working on in their own way to push the company forward is where we've moved to. And at the same time, you have to start somewhere. A lot of companies love to talk about moving from sort of a data swamp to a data lake, and that's inclusive of us. I mean, we went from having individual loyalty programs across all of those different properties I talked about earlier into one loyalty program with one view of the consumer. That's very hard to do. So the data was, getting the data into the right place to make it available and then make it accessible was our biggest challenge. But you do have to start somewhere. So creating that narrative that you're going to work with what you have, get the information to the different functions, and then continue to build on it and iterate on the information that you're providing them over time. Sometimes it's going to be reporting, sometimes it's going to be very manual, and eventually you hope to get it accessible into dashboard formats. So so making sure that you're starting somewhere and creating the narrative that you're going to continue to iterate over time is really important. And it keeps, everybody talks about bringing people along, and that allows you to buy yourself some time and do that.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jed. Fascinating. So can you just maybe go back a step, maybe, in this difference between accessibility and availability, and how you make that distinction and how you communicate the importance of that distinction across the organization?
Yeah, I mean, so we have a really robust data team. And then there are people within my organization that we have a consumer development strategy team that sort of sit in the middle. And then we have different functional teams that need to be able to utilize the data to really perform their jobs at the highest level. So my consumer development team and consumer data strategy team works with all of the different functions to make sure they're getting the data, just basically build out scope and making sure that they're getting the data in the way that they need it and they're reporting in the way that they need it. And then the data organization, just like any IT function, needs to prioritize resources. And there is a lot of data engineering and there is a lot of work behind that. And honestly, work translates into capital dollars. So prioritization here is really important. The idea of being available is having a process for ad hoc reporting, and submitting something, a request, and having it be available in 1 to 2 weeks. The where it becomes more accessible is when the asks are scoped out, and there is a long-term roadmap against those asks. So those may start in easy ad hoc reporting. So we're getting, one of our reports is called "Who Bought That," which a lot of different pieces of our organization ask for. Who bought that? That was, so today the "Who Bought That" report was scoped out across all of these different functions within our organization. And was now built out within the data infrastructure where that is an automated pull. It's no longer 2-3 weeks, no longer recreating the wheel, whether it's our product team, our real estate team, our marketing teams asking who bought that. It's one answer that is easily automated in quick turn. Would I prefer to have that in dashboard material right now, where the people don't have to ask and the data team doesn't have to pull that? Yes, we will get there. But that's an example of the roadmap. It's gone from ad hoc to a standard answer that is scoped out by my team and will eventually go into an accessible dashboard.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks for clarifying, Jed. Where does the data team sit? Do they sit within your team? Are they cross-functional? And how do you kind of manage that relationship between the different functions?
Data team sits. We have a pretty significant data insight team. So there's two pieces, right? There's the first party data that works within our actual first party data, and then there is a more research and insight, a more qualitative group. So the data team sits within our IT. We have a customer development and strategy team within my organization that includes loyalty and membership. And they're sort of the in-between. They work extremely well with both the data team and then our business partners from all of our different properties that we have. So they're a shared service. And then our research team handles more, whether that is, we have a consumer panel that, an online consumer panel that has 10,000 different consumers in it that really, again, helps us be really relevant, or any of our external segmentation partners, or any qualitative research that they do, consumer brand health, things like that. And they sit within our team.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, thanks, Jed. One of the ideas I want to touch upon is this idea of the changing customer journey. And actually, the customer journey is not what it was. It's not necessarily what we thought it would be. People are browsing in store, then perhaps going to digital to fulfill that purchase, and vice versa as well, of course. So how has the changing nature of the customer journey either surprised you or validated the journey that you're already on, or influenced the strategies that you're thinking about going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because customer journey has sort of become like a cliche marketing-ese term. but at the same time, it's actually one of the few I like. And I'm somewhat embarrassed to use it, but I use it. And because it actually really is important. And this is where data actually really does help, right? So, and this is where prioritization really does help. You talked about that earlier, right? So 90% of our traffic, 90% of our digital traffic is through mobile. 80% of our e-com sales are through mobile. So clearly that is a really important consumer journey of our piece of our consumer, whether it's mobile web or mobile app. At the same time, 4 out of every 5 of our store purchases, our store transactions, actually start with somebody on their phone. So for us, yes, the app and the mobile web are incredibly important and are high value pieces of the consumer journey, but still a lot of the purchases is happening in store. So, the consumer journey, making sure that we have a value for understanding how important the app is, how important mobile web is, making sure we understand how important the store experience is. And then even when you're talking about the digital traffic, 50% of our online traffic arrive to a PDP page, which is like a product display page, right from Google, or use our internal search. So what does that mean for us? Well, so demand creation is incredibly important. Both, I mean, to the omni world in general, but certainly to our e-com. People are buying a hot product, a hot collab, a hot collection, or a hot trend. So for online, there's very, very little browsing. People tend to know what they want, whether it's from social, whether it's from peer-to-peer. And people tend to know what they want and they go directly and buy it, right? So again, mobile, search, store experience. These are pieces of the consumer journey, social pieces of the consumer journey that we have to prioritize, and make sure are really good experiences. And then, honestly, the stores piece is really interesting. People tend to come in. They may know what they want, but then they're surrounded by choice. So they come in with the same type of demand creation. They've shopped online, they've browsed online, they've gone through our Instagram handle, they've talked to their crew, and they might think they know what they want because we've done such a great job driving demand for an idea. But then they come into a store and they're surrounded by terrific product, all with different stories. And they may end up buying something different or an additional purchase. So it's funny because the endless aisle that we all thought was online because there's no stockroom, actually, when you pay attention to the consumer journey, is actually in store. The browsing and the shopping tends to happen more in store than it does online.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, Jed. And I guess it kind of highlights this idea that digital used to be thought of as something of a synonym for e-commerce, I guess, and for sort of mobile and social. But actually incorporating those very physical elements into the digital journey are absolutely critical. So I'd be fascinated to get some thoughts on how you're tying all these elements together.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think that when you look at org structures and org design, and I'm passionate about org design, I think a lot of problems manifest itself from org design, and not a lot of people want to admit that. And I think that there's a self-awareness factor there. And we've had we're very matrixy, and we've had many different structures set up in the past. And one of the things that I did do recently is within our business properties, our different banners, I eliminated the term digital and I eliminated the term brand. Because it's silly and old school. Digital isn't a moniker for e-commerce. It incorporates, both online and offline elements, and has to be thought of in the, in the overall context of the customer journey. So I have people on my banner teams who focus on acquisition and retention. And I do have people in some shared services that have digital media or digital channel expertise. But the focus, again, focus on the consumer journey. It's not like, oh, they are a digital customer and they are a store customer. That doesn't really exist. And it's the same case for brand. I think people get themselves in trouble. And I think this is where the whole idea of full funnel comes in. People get themselves in trouble when they sort of segregate the idea of performance marketing and low funnel from brand marketing and upper funnel. What tends to happen there is the entire middle space that oftentimes fuels the lower funnel, which is traditionally where most companies spend are today. They're not working together. So you want everybody thinking digitally, and you want everybody thinking about stores, and you want everybody thinking about the brand and the business.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, we can maybe talk about how you kind of bringing all those different teams together and sort of driving that culture change as we go deeper into this. But we are starting to get a couple of questions coming through from the audience, so I want to make sure that we have enough time for those. Folks, if you do have any questions for Jed, just a reminder, please do let us know. But our first question today from our audience comes from Teresa over at Western Union. Good morning to you, Teresa. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Great to see you. Thanks for joining us up here on stage.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. What's your question for Jed?
So, although our business is completely different, it's financial services, but there's a lot of things that are similar. So my question, and maybe you mentioned this, what's your percentage from kind of an online to in-store purchase? You mentioned something about 90%, but I wasn't sure.
No, so 90% of our digital traffic is mobile. So but still today our online penetration is about 25% of our business. Sneakers tend to be one of the slower moving pieces because of sizing, and people like to look, feel, and unless you know exactly what you want, which is growing in our world, right? Demand creation and for very specific items or trends is also very popular to a segment of the world. But sneakers in general tends to be a little bit slower in online only. We also still do a pretty decent percentage of cash business. It's not nearly what it used to be, especially with all the different cash alternatives, whether it's Venmo, Afterpay, Klarna, et cetera. But still, the combination between, I would say, a decent cash business and the idea that sneakers people like to try on, touch, feel, smell, even makes the penetration of the sneaker business a little bit slower on the online transition. Although honestly, the past few years did speed it up.
Right. So then, how do you capture the data from the customers of the walk-in stores?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a couple of different ways, right? So we do have, I think I mentioned the Bonvoy of sneakers, which is our loyalty program, FLX. So it's making sure that we have really good benefits associated with that. And I think that we're going to get better and better at that. Our loyalty program is somewhat new, and we have some really, really strong advancements to come. And then and I think that's honestly the biggest piece is making sure that you are treating your members better than you're treating everybody else, and giving strong incentive for people to sign up. Obviously there's things like e-receipts and things like that as well. But it's really driven mostly out of our loyalty program.
But then your store staff needs to promote it. They needs to actually promote the program for the customers to enroll.
Yep. And you need to make sure that you have very simple benefits for them to articulate. And you need to make sure that the sign up is very seamless and easy. And that can be done, whether that is through the store register, whether it's through a QR code in the store, which has gotten better than it was a few years ago, or whether they're just driving people back to the app or something like that, where it's really it's really simple and quick. But again, it's making sure that you have the right. But it's making sure that you have the right benefits for the right customer, because not all your customers want the same benefits. And we aren't perfect there either, but it is something that we are really focused on, making sure that we have different benefits for different customers.
Great stuff. Thank you, Jed. Thanks for the questions, Teresa. Much appreciated. Lovely to see you here this morning. Our next audience question comes from Janie over at Allied Finance. Hi there, Janie.
Hey, good morning.
Hi, Jamie. How's things?
Morning.
Good. How are you guys?
Good, thanks. Good, lovely to see you.
Good. Yeah, same here.
Great stuff.
Yeah,
What's
so
your
my
question for Jed?
is, yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned at the very top of the call, I think, or your presentation here about the incubator program you set up, Greenhouse.
Yep.
I'd love to learn more about that. Is that successful, and any insights on how we can stand that up, or somebody can stand that up internally?
Yeah, I can very much talk about Greenhouse because it was it was part of it was part of my organization and part of what I started. And again, it some of that goes back to the self-awareness piece, right? I mean, we are like I talked about, we're really good at monthly and quarterly comps, and I am somebody that believes in entities. I believe in things. So when you tend to have names to things and create formality and teams and dedicated people behind them, they tend to become real to you, your team, and the partners that you need. So one of the Greenhouse is an example of that. One of the, I'd say, weaknesses we had were developing long-term partnerships with smaller brands or creators that were a little bit closer to culture. Just because it was very, very hard for the organization to focus on things that may take time to develop because everybody was so focused on bigger scale, right? We're a big company. And whether or not we might really love a small brand and their story, we tend to try to rush them sometimes to the finish line, which doesn't help anybody. In fact, it can really hurt. And so we needed a dedicated time we needed dedicated time and people to take care of brands and creators and bring them along at their pace to try to get them to the growth and their objective, whether that took a year, 2 years, 3 years. And we also needed a little bit more of I would say a little bit more of a hype engine and something, and a move away from the big bad commercial Foot Locker culturally too. So Greenhouse was our answer to that. So we actually are changing a little bit with it, but Greenhouse only told one product story at a time. It brought in different collaborations, some which partnered with existing brands, new brands, but tons of new creators. And it brought them along at their own pace. And it was only and products and collaborations were only available through the app at the beginning, through a Greenhouse app. We slowly started bringing some of those into the Foot Locker Inc. ecosystem. And we've had some incredible successes. We have some creators or brands that honestly didn't fit and didn't work. And we have others that have developed over 2-3 years to go from small few $100,000 to 10, 20 million, $30 million companies with us. We are now shifting a lot of those smaller. We acquired a company called Atmos, which is a Japanese sneaker retailer, sneaker boutique that has a lot of it's at the top of the sphere in the sneaker world, and we're working with Atmos to bring a lot of our Greenhouse projects directly to them and have them incubate it, which even further validates those brands and creators, and then eventually they'll move on into they'll move on to our ecosystem and do bigger and better. But it also allowed us to use things like our own manufacturing and bring these companies along in ways that maybe they weren't very good at, which is, anything from legal to insurance. We're a big company and we put up a lot of barriers. So we really needed an entity that was going to help sort of overcome those barriers and bring people along and help them through them.
Great stuff.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks for sharing the journey, Jed. Much appreciated. Jamie, thanks for the question. Lovely to see you here this morning. Jed, so much more we could talk about here, but we are sadly out of time. I get my producer in my ear telling us that the time is up.
I can talk forever.
Well, listen, it was a fascinating journey, and I'm sure that there are more questions from the audience here. We'll maybe pass those along to you to answer at your leisure. But many thanks for joining us here this morning. Much appreciated. And thanks for getting the summit off to such a great start. Lovely speaking with you.
Of course. Thank you, guys. Talk to you guys soon. Enjoy.